like the way that the occupational therapists talk about it is they sound like they're little professors. They can't code switch. Now this is what's huge for middle school. Not being able to code switch is just ginormous. So I want you to imagine that you're a teacher, and because you are, and you have, in between classes, you have 3 minutes between, how many minutes do you have between classes? Like 4? So whatever it is, 3 or 4, whatever, 4.5, whatever. So you go get a drink of water, and you come back. So that's 4, and you would like to leave your classroom. Many of you are in classrooms with like 20 8th grade people, right? That could be really smelly. I mean, honestly, like this is not an insult to 8th grade children and 7th grade children, but really, who would blame you all for needing to get a little bit of air, right? Okay, so you go out the hallway, you need some air, you'd like to talk to an adult for like 4 seconds, right, before you go back in and talk to a group of 7th graders, and you come back. Well, in the meantime, one kid who is really sort of can't code switch has figured out like a joke that the other kids think is really funny, and they know, and he's like really wants to please them. And so then what he does is writes like, it's a dirty joke, or it's something about a penis, because it's 7th and 8th grade, and it's a boy, and it's gotta be at some point about a penis. So he writes, on the piece of paper, like something about his, a penis, and then another kid tells him, wouldn't it be really funny if you put Ms. Wiseman's name above the penis, right? Wouldn't that is so funny, right? So the kid, now these kids also sometimes have much less ability to gauge time, as in time passing, where other children are much more aware of what 4 minutes means. So this child is really wanting to please this kid or these children, and he's getting laughs from these children, and that's really important. That's social currency. It makes you feel included. So then the teacher comes back into the room, and what do they see? They see a piece of paper with a penis with your name on it, right? Because that child couldn't code switch, couldn't figure out that things had to be different very fast. And then that child's the one that gets into trouble. But now that child needs to be held accountable so he doesn't get manipulated by the other students. And he needs to be accountable because he can't write that kind of stuff in school. That's not appropriate. But to only focus on that kid as the source of the problem completely misses the power dynamic in the classroom. And then every other kid in that classroom pretty much knows what happened. They can't maybe put words to it, but they know that that kid was set up. And then if that child's the one that's only disciplined, then we as adults don't look like we've got our game on. Does that make, right? Is that, okay. It's also unfair. It's also really unfair to the young person who can't code switch and feels like, well, I'm trying to get these kids to like me, and now I'm in trouble, right? And of course, it's going to be really hard for him to say what happened because that's disloyalty, right? He wants to be loyal. So he's not going to say what happened. Or if he does, and he says it for a minute, it's really common for those kids to recant, right? So they go to Max and they say, this is what happened. 24 hours later or 12 hours later, or the next day, they say, well, that's not really happening. They go back on their story because they don't want to admit, they told the truth right afterwards, but then they want to go back, okay? All right.
Well,
yeah.
What's meant by when you say code?
Code, meaning there's a code for the kids. Thank you. There's a code for how you talk to kids and how you behave around children, and there's a code and how you behave and act around adults. So, so an easier way of saying it is you don't. Forgive my language, but you do not use the word pussy around adults, right? You don't say that in a classroom when an adult is not there. I walk out the classroom for 2 minutes, and there's only kids in the classroom. Hell yes, you say that word. Does that make sense? That's code switching. Ms. Wiseman come back into the room. You don't say the word pussy because you code switch. Okay, thanks. All right, so these kids are also very easily snitches because they're very rule or focused. They have immature interests, and then for some of them that have significant social skills deficits, this is actually one of the consequences. This is a tough one, right? Because especially since this is disproportionately affecting boys, who would be, and I say this as a mother of 2 adolescents, who is worse at understanding boy culture than a mom, basically, right? In general, what would that be like? So I want you to imagine that lots of times mothers in these situations, and occupational therapists will tell kids, I want you to think about the kids that fit in your head this way, okay? And I want you to think about just regular Casey kids. And most of the time, when I work with occupational therapists who are doing this with these children, is that they will teach these kids to say, hi, how are you doing? My name is Rosalind. It's really good to meet you, right? That is not the code. That's not the language that you need to use to get along with middle school kids, right? Think about your children here at Casey. Think about the complexity of the way that boys greet each other, right? There is so much complexity in the way boys say hello. Think about that. So, and it is not, hi, really nice to meet you. My name is Rosalind, right? Okay. So this is actually a huge challenge, and this is one of the things that I worked on a lot with people who work with these kids, because they realize they're so well-intentioned, but they don't work with people like you a lot. They don't. So they don't have a lot, and so once you say to them, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Oh my, I cannot believe we are setting these kids up for walking around like this. So that's why we need to have more interaction with people like you who are on the ground working with kids on a day-to-day basis, and the people who are only working with this segment of the population of children, right? All right, so last thing I'm gonna do, any questions, concerns, comments before I move on? All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what actually I feel like I need to say with Shantara, because Shantara really did work with me on this for so long, and she hasn't come to us, something I've done in, I don't know, 10 years or so, right? So I have a way of managing social competency, of creating it, and what I would tell you is, you all have your ways of being able to manage when kids are in conflict with each other. I don't care how it's used. I think the most important thing about when we talk to young people, I don't care if it's in your language arts class or if it's a counseling moment, that when kids are in conflict with each other, and we are giving them strategies about how to use their voice and use their words, and I frankly think using your words in middle school is just like, most of children, I think when you say use your words, that's like 5-year-old thing, right? Does that make sense to you all? And like, you want to get a young person, a middle school person, to disengage with you, say, use your words, and and also give them things like, it really hurts my feelings when you do X. Does that make sense? So I think the way in which we're talking to young people about conflict resolution is so cheesy, and it just is. Like, even the best strategies are going to come across as weird and cheesy, right? I mean, think about it. Think about like when someone says to you, how are you going to talk to somebody when you're really angry, right? It just feels weird. So I think we need to acknowledge that. Yes, person, that you're really angry at the other kid, it does feel weird. It'd be much easier to talk behind their back or want to fight them. Sure, it's like way easier to think about that. Feels weird and cheesy. So acknowledge that. This is what I do when I'm talking to them about this. I talk about this thing I said in the very beginning about mastery. You are not going to have 100% control. But you've got to practice this, or you've got to be able to plan, because otherwise that person is going to work you, or the situation is going to work you. So I don't care if you think I understand, you think it's cheesy, you think it's weird, but we've got to get to a place where wouldn't you rather have some control over the situation than other people making decisions for you, right? That's not cool. Like, I wouldn't want that. Do you want that? So it's getting them to incentivize about why they would do something so insane, and really I think it is like as insane as being able to talk through a problem for a lot of your kids, for middle school people, instead of just like saying something nasty on Instagram or saying something nasty on Yik Yak. Has Yik Yak hit Casey yet?
A little bit.
Okay, a little bit? All right, I don't know. I haven't heard at my home about Yik Yak. I'll explain what Yik Yak is in a minute. So that's how I describe it. Don't worry about Yik Yak for like 2 minutes. Hold on. All right, you're like, what is this thing that's going to come to us again? Some stupid social networking platform. Yes, you are correct. All right. All right, so for my gamer, okay, so here's my 4 points of it, is you stop and you think when and where and how, like where, now, later, when am I doing this? You explain what happened, what you don't like and what you want, which means there's no feelings. In my world of middle school, I would prefer children to talk about feelings later. Affirm and acknowledge. This is where you can get into some fuzzy worm, sort of. Affirming means I have the right to be here and be treated with dignity, so do you, and I need to acknowledge anything that I did that contributed to the problem. Like maybe I've been sitting on something for a really long time and talking to everybody else about it. Or maybe, yes, I did do that horrible thing to you too. Okay? So it needs to be a little bit, so not just about rights, it's about responsibilities as well. Then for the kids, not for us, they have to go through if they like people, right? Because people you can So do you lock in the friendship? Do you take a vacation, or do you lock it out? You don't have to be friends with people. It's really, you don't. Like, I'm not in this because I want you to be friends with this kid. You got to decide if this relationship is good for you or not. It's a really powerful thing to be hearing from your core teachers, not just from your counseling staff, but from your core teachers. Okay? All right. Now, I'm going to turn this to us, how we manage ourselves. So this is, if some of you have seen my little TED Talk, this is where I talk more in depth about this. But in the moment when you're walking down the hallway, what do? Like, how do you use SEAL in the moment? So in the moment, you assess the kids on the approach. Once you just assess yourself, like, what do I know about these kids? Am I being fair? What do I know about these kids? Am I being fair to these kids? Like, what's going on with these kids? What's going on with me? Do not ask the group who's responsible. Now, middle school people sort of innately know this, because it's sort of the culture of middle school that you would know. The only thing the person's going to be able to do is the kid who's got the most social power is going to basically try and work you, right? You don't want to get into debate or negotiation or a long conversation with children, right? So don't ask the group who's responsible. Elementary school people have a harder time with this, because they'll go up to the kids and say, who started it, right? Asking who started it, the only thing you're going to do in that situation is get worked, right? I'm telling you, it is completely counterproductive to say that, 100%. So asking also, frankly, and I've done this as a teacher myself, so maybe this works for you, but I also think a really counterproductive thing, and it might work for you, it has not worked for me, is that when something, when you turn your back and something nasty happens, like, or some funny, nasty, whatever you want to call it, right? You can't see what happens, you're not exactly sure who did it. All right, so then you say, well, someone's going to have to tell me what's going to happen, or all of you are punished, right? That sort of standard kind of, it's sort of a classic. I don't think that works. I think it reinforces the dynamic of the kids' loyalty to each other against you. That's what I think. That's what I've seen over and over and over again, is that's what happens, because they're not going to break. And if they break, if one kid breaks, it doesn't help you in the long run, because it doesn't help you in your relationship with young people in terms of creating a learning environment of, we all are here, we all participate, and my relationship with you is based on dignity, right? It's based on, like, you can try and work me because you're in middle school, so I get it, right? Like, I get it. I've turned my back, terrible, funny, whatever, funny things have happened, but there are different ways of dealing with that, and I'll show you how I do it. Okay. Get the group on task with promise to follow up individually. So I say, get them to where they need to be. I think this is where you can put your values declaration statement. Again, no negotiations, no debates, no conversations in the hallway. So I know it's right. When you hear kids say like, if you're in the hallway and you hear kids be mean to another kid, or you hear the word retarded, or even if it's older, we were talking about this today, about, even if you hear it's gay, don't be gay, or don't be faggot, or whatever, don't be a slut, don't be a bitch, don't be whatever you're hearing in the hallway. I would say in that moment, even if you don't know the kids, even if they're not your students, you say some kind of values declaration of, you do not use that word to put people down. If you get any pushback from the kids, I would just say it again, of like, we are not going to use the word gay to put somebody down. We're not going to make a racist joke to put somebody down. We're not doing it, right? That's a really important part of that, right? Now, here, again, no negotiations and debates, right? That's for, like, really engaged conversations in the classroom, right? Okay. Then you assess them as they leave. So anything that you need to know about young people, I think, in those situations, that's a really difficult power thing for them. You've got to be able to exercise authority ethically, which means no domination. Domination is only going to get pushback, and they're never going to internalize whatever lesson you're trying to get to them. So assess them as they leave. So watch as they walk away, just for 2 seconds. And it's not going to be unheard of, right? Of kids saying something nasty about you, or like, what a bitch, like under your breath, right? What an ass, like those kinds of things. That happens. I'm sure it happens a lot. That's what teaching's about. So what I would do is I would say, hey, turn around, please. And they might keep walking, right? Because that's what they do. They keep walking. So they're like, I didn't hear that. I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that. You say, hey, turn around. And then when they turn around, you say, hey, I just asked you to not call people retarded or gay, whatever it was. Just reiterate it. I came at you with respect. I didn't feel like I needed to write somebody up or, talk to the principal about it or anything. I talked to you about this one-on-one. I don't think we need to do anything more about this. But your reaction about that? Come on. Do you understand the reason I'm talking to you? Yeah. Right, because they're still not going to be able to say yes, and thank you for being so respectful to me in the hallway. Right? You're just going to be like, right, my kids would totally do that, right? Just, I came at you with respect, that's what I expect. Are we good? Right, no ultimatums, no like, hey, are we good? All right, now if it happens again, or if you got a kid who pushes back on you again and ups the ante, that child needs help. That's why Kristen or Max, that's why these people are here. If you have a kid who you have come to and you have said in a calm way, and you've had that kind of conversation and the kid still is being really aggressive, that is a problem. That child needs help. And that is when you don't have to be a counselor. When you're a core curricular person, you're a math teacher, you don't have to do that. But what you've done is you've demonstrated ethical authority, you've established cultural rules, right, of the school, you've created a safe space in the hallway, which is really important for the other students to see. But if that child pushes back on you even more and escalates, then you think, oh, okay, this kid really needs help, and now I have to go to the people who are trained on that. Does that make sense to you all? Okay. All right. Here's specifics. What if you get a kid who you've caught and he's a fake apologizer? Okay? So here's how I use SEAL with fake apologizers. Fake apologizers. I'm sorry, Ms. Wiseman, I'll never do it again. Right? Some variation of that. After they said, I didn't do it. Okay. Here's the explain. I could be wrong, but the way you just apologized doesn't seem like you mean it. But if I'm wrong, tell me. Right? Just tell me. Right? So this is chill conversation. This is like ideal SEAL. So you're doing this right, and you probably as a teacher will have this experience. I can't imagine how you couldn't. Here's the pushback. I totally mean it. You say, look, I know you don't know me well. That's the case, right? Because sometimes we don't know these kids. But if I see something that's a problem, I'm going to address it. I'm speaking to you with respect. I know you can say the right thing, but if your words aren't true, I think we can both agree that's pretty meaningless. I want your words to mean something. Otherwise, don't say it. And then, I'd say, hey, just think about it, and walk away from them at that moment. Let them sit with oh, that didn't work, right? Right? But you're naming it, you're handling it, you're not saying, how dare you speak to me that way. The minute you say, how dare you, when I say this to parents too, the minute they get in their head, how dare you, they have lost their minds. Does that make sense? Right? My least favorite statement ever when I'm dealing with parents is, how dare you? Right? Then I know I'm dealing with somebody whose anxiety, I'll say it nicely, whose anxiety has completely hijacked their ability to be a decent human being. Does that make sense? Right? Because the only thing that's going to come after that is either an attack on my integrity, an attack on my competency, an attack on the school, something nasty is about to come, was going to fly out of that person's mouth. Okay? All right, now I'm going to flip it another way. So here's another SEAL. What about dress code, which is hilarious because, wait, let me unclick here, which is hilarious because my older child loves to violate this kind of stuff, right? I will only say, hilarious, right? Okay. And I'm very grateful for the way the school has handled it thus far, and for all of you here for handling it the way you have. And I mean that very, very genuinely. So this is about talking to girls. This is difficult to speak with you, but it's important to me. You're getting into trouble for violating the dress code, and we have to address it. But way more important to me than the dress code is you. Now, this is for girls. I understand that some men have a really hard time wanting to talk to girls about dress code, right? Because they're wearing things that are super short. You're like, I don't want to say this, because if I say this, it looks like I'm looking at them. I totally get it. I empathize with you. I still really strongly encourage you to say something like what I'm about to show you, or I am showing you, okay? You're a smart young woman with a lot to contribute. Like all young women, you're growing up in a culture that can try to dismiss you by convincing you that the most important thing about you is your physical appearance. I want you to be proud and comfortable with how you look, but I also want you to be proud about who you are beyond that. Can you think about what's most important to you and how you want to present yourself, and how does that reflect what you're proud of about yourself on the inside? This is a statement that men can say to women, to girls. Really powerful coming from all of us. I will tell you that Charlie, who's my colleague who does come with me lots of times, so Charlie, can you raise your hand? So Charlie works with me a lot all over the country, And we are at a boarding school on the East Coast, and I had this incredible experience in September of doing this. Boarding school kids can be really cynical. I don't know if any of you went to boarding school, but they are tough. They are super tough. So we had just spoken to the entire school, and we went to lunch. And the football team asked me to talk to them about some girl problems that they were having. And so I went and talked to them, and then these two young women, they were sitting at the dining room table, so I could only see them from here up, okay? Asked me to come and talk to them. So I went over and talked to them, and they were from Miami. They were freshmen, one sophomore, one freshman. And they looked really appropriate from here up. So I was talking to them about dress code. They were talking about how they feel about themselves and how they're doing really well and how they're feeling more comfortable with themselves. And I left about 5 minutes later, sat down at another table, and I saw them get up. And they were wearing, the school was really struggling with dress code. Little Catholic kind of schoolgirl kind of thing, like that was ending right about here. And they were wearing knee-high socks up to here with high heels. So what they were doing was they were absolutely riffing off of the porn kind of infantilization girl fantasy. And how do you talk to girls who are walking around and they were wearing extremely revealing underwear, which you could easily see when they went up any stair. One stair, you would basically see it, okay? So it's really, how do you do that? And people were reacting so strongly to them in really negative ways. And the senior boys and the junior boys were going after them. You could see what was happening. The girls, and it was so tough to look at these kids. And the girls said to us, well, we're from Miami. This is literally what they said to us. We're from Miami, and so this is classy. And, and first of all, you say, well, A, you're not in Miami, right? You're in Massachusetts. Second is that you really need to understand, I can't control what you wear, which is really important to say to kids. I cannot control what you wear. I need you to understand the history of what you're doing, right? What you're doing. So I need you to be educated about what this is, what you're reflecting. And I can't control what you wear, but I want you to know where it's coming from. Now, to those girls, immediately, they've gotten a little bit better, but those girls, this is an ongoing process because this is about identity. And it's about how you interact with the culture. And middle school and high school is when you are doing that the most. And so that needs to be respected as a process, even when it makes us react so strongly. So here's one more for you. And this is about if you ever get a kid who complains to you about another faculty person. Because I think sometimes that children have good relationships with, really like one teacher and then really don't get along with another teacher. So then they go to they go to Miss Thacker, they go to Miss Candybaugh, whatever. It's just people my children have Miss Myers, that you go and say, I'm so angry at this person. They're always making me late, or they're always getting me in trouble. And you don't want to throw the faculty person under the bus, right? But you also want to be able to support that child. And it actually can be, or Mr. Lurie, right? Rome loves Mr. Lurie. That it's really important to be able to connect this to advocating for yourself. So this is what I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to tie it to dress code. If someone talks to you about being in a dress code, do what they say. If you feel that they've been rude to you, which is different, right? The way in which you're treated is different. I still want you to do what they say, but then tell me, or tell the administrator you trust the most. So it's about, I said in the very beginning, about identifying what adult that you connect with that you can go to ask for help. If you're genuinely confused about why or what you're wearing is important to you and it's not communicating something rude or degrading about someone else, you have the right to respectfully ask why you're in violation. If you feel strongly about this, you can research your rights about freedom of expression in schools. Bring that to the administration. You may not get what you want, but it's important to know your rights, and I will support that. So any core person, math, science, Spanish, any of you, can do this, and it also encourages the young people to be able to understand their rights. So it is not helpful, I don't think, for a kid to say, well, I want to wear this and it's my right. Really? Why? Why is it your right? Why don't you do some research about understanding rights in school and self-expression? That's an important thing to understand. And what about the issue of it's not communicating something rude or degrading about somebody else? So you have rights, but you also have responsibilities to other people in this community. This is a conversation I have constantly in my house. So it is really important to understand that, not just from the legal thing of like your legal rights and your rights of self-expression, but our softer rights of our social contract with each other. And a school being an extension of our social contract. And that just because you want to do something does not give you the right to necessarily do it if it's offensive to other people. Why is it offensive to other people? Let's educate yourself about why that would be offensive. And why, and this is the big question that I've asked, frankly, mostly high school boys for a long time, is why is that right to want to express yourself more important than another person's right to feel comfortable in their community? Let's have that conversation, because that's a really important conversation to have. And if you can tie that to U.S. history, if you can tie that to social studies, like you all have really good social studies, I think you do, social studies course here, then what happens is you are literally tying academic competency and what they're learning with social competency and their understanding of their responsibilities as they walk down the hallway. Okay. Questions, comments about this? There's high school boys? Yeah. There's a couple girls actually who will back this up. Sometimes I think in high school it's more about backing up those boys who look like they're cool than they actually believe what they're saying. But it's not uncommon that when I'm working in high schools that it's usually a junior boy or a senior boy who has some amount of social status will use his social status to say, well, we have the right to express myself. I have the right to express myself. That is my right. And I want to try and get away from, they can go read there are really interesting legal cases about freedom of expression in schools and students. I find it actually fascinating. But more importantly than that is, I say to the boys, is why is it more important that you have the right to wear that than another person's right to feel uncomfortable, or the other person's right to feel comfortable, in your school? Why? So we're balancing expression, freedom of expression, with comfort level, right? Being able to be here. And why is it important for you to express something of yourself that would literally make somebody feel that they don't want to be here? Right? Why is that? Where is that coming from? Why is that important to you? And we need to balance this. This is important. And I need to really ask you, where is that coming from? Because why are you sort of doubling down? Because sometimes kids double down on that. This is my right, and they get really worked up about it. They also, it's our responsibility then to say, well, why? Why is your right to entertain yourself or not? A lot of times when the kids are using this in that situation, they're doing things that they actually don't know the history of, or they're using it to make other people uncomfortable. And that needs to be put out there, right, and challenged. Does that answer your question? Ms. McBride, did I forget anything? I'm serious. Did I forget anything?
Well, I always like to say, if you can leave, but...
You can leave where? The school? The job, right. Oh, that I get to. I get to leave, right.
The student, and then, because they continue, it becomes this dialogue unnecessarily of my right, you're on a dress code, I'm not, and then you say, you know what, Dora, if this is not the school for you, we would hate to lose you, but I get to say that.
And you get to go, and you were in private school.
Yes.
Dum, dum, dum. Not always, but the last 3 years she was. Anything else? All right, let me see. Oh yeah, I've got 5 more. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to show you as my last thing before I excuse you all is what about how do we handle. This is the thing that I say to bystanders. I'm sorry this is happening. Thank you for telling me, because I know it can be hard to come forward about things like this. This is any kid that's connecting with you as a teacher. They like you, right? So if they like you, they're going to maybe come to you and talk to you about stuff. They trust you, right? They trust you to tell something that they're uncomfortable about. And then, what if you get a kid who's really a problem, right? Who's having a moment of being really, not is, as their entire person, but is having a moment of that being a problem. So I just wanted to go over with you a little bit the way I think about this, and I have lots of opportunities to think about this. So here's what I think. I think working with a socially intelligent aggressor can be tricky. So I try to remind myself and parents that this is one moment, it is not a lifetime of crappy behavior. I tell parents that I'm going to talk to the child, I'm going to get back to the parent within 36 hours at the max. Now, just you guys might have your own protocols, but this is what I think in general works for people, for parents. And if you don't know the answer to it, at the very least, just check in with them and say, hey, I know I don't have an answer for this, but I just want you to know I'm thinking about it, because it reduces their anxiety. And if you don't talk to them, it totally jacks up their anxiety, which means the next time you talk to them, they're going to be crazy, right? And they're going to be much more likely to say, how dare you, okay? So we want to avoid the how dare you. And then with the student, what I do is I say, and this is what all right, so X was reported to me. Is that accurate? Is any of it accurate? And if any of it's accurate, then your job as the teacher, as the adult, is to say, well, that person's truth is their truth. Right? You can have a different opinion about it, but that's the way they saw it. So you can't say they just took it the wrong way. Here's what I do as a SEAL. Can you tell me why we are meeting right now? Right? Because any kid that's socially intelligent is going to try and figure out what you know. Right? That's just the thing that they're going to do. Anybody would. They're trying to do damage control. It doesn't matter if it's the principal or if it's the math teacher. It's just like, I got to figure out what this person knows. And it gets bigger, right? As you walk to administrators, what do they know, and how can I control it? The student says, I don't understand why this has to be such a big deal. Whatever it is, right? This is boring, this is stupid, and you're micromanaging. This is like Boulder, so we're overly sensitive about whatever the problem is. Do you tend to be good at winning arguments? They're going to say something like, maybe, I don't know, what are we doing here? Does anyone, this is an example, right? Has anyone ever, you've called gay, retarded, or whatever it is that they've done, put it in here, made a joke about their religion, ever asked you to stop? And this happens at Casey, I know that, because I know it, right? So you're not immune, just like any other school in the country. And the student maybe says no, or is silent. Now if they say no, then they basically cop to the fact that they're doing this. Does that make sense? Can you think of a reason why they would have such a hard time talking to you about this? They're gonna push back on you about this. Socially intelligent aggressors are very good at what they do. So they're gonna say, how should I know? Something like the other kid is weak. That's basically what they're saying, is why should I know? And even if I did know, it would be a stupid reason anyway. So this is really stupid and I have to go to practice. So why am I here, right? My mom's about to pick me up. That is a very, very effective tactic. If you're good at arguing and comebacks, why wouldn't someone tell you? Just stay the course. Well, it's not my fault if they can't speak up, right? If you have a really intractable kid, then you do a values declaration here. I'm speaking up for them. Making comments and jokes where you say exactly what it is that's happening is unacceptable, even when the person doesn't say anything. I know you can continue doing this when I'm not around, so you can own to the fact of like, yeah, I can't stalk you 24/7. I don't even want to stalk you 24/7. And then after this meeting, you can go tell your friends how stupid this conversation was. Like, you can go make fun of me about how dumb I am. You can do that. You can blow it off. If you do, here are the possible consequences, just so you understand the lay of the land. Like I say to students sometimes, I just don't want you to have any surprises. If the life of the target becomes more difficult as a result of this conversation, that can lead to additional consequences, and that might include X, Y, and Z. And then, this is the important one, please feel free to tell your parents about this. I would love for you to tell your parents about this, right? Now you've got different protocols in the school, and my experience thus far has been, honest to goodness, that teachers have been great with me. So I've had kids in this school for 3 years, have been great with me about talking to me about the problems when my kids are acting out in various ways that they are. And I really appreciate that. And the correspondence that I've gotten from faculty here has been so good, because it's basically like, here's the problem. I never have gotten the feeling of like condemn, like your child is like, never, ever have I gotten that. It's always been very fact-based. But I really do believe when you're dealing with somebody who's, and I certainly can get anxious just like any other parent, But saying, please tell your parents about this because socially intelligent, aggressive kids are so good at manipulating parents and keeping information away from each other, right? So that if God forbid, you're in a situation where the parents are really aggressive with you, that you can say, well, I really did I or did I not, to the student, didn't I actively encourage you to talk to your parents? Because it's really important to me that we have good relationships with parents, right? There's no thing. All right, so this to me is, yes, it's true because we want parents to know, but it's also important to put that kid on notice. And that kid really, there are a few. The problem is that socially intelligent kids can have disproportionate social power, right? So it is incumbent upon parents and teachers and administrators, we have to work together about this, right? And speaking as somebody who does have I do have kids who are very verbal, and I really, as a parent, that can be really concerning to me for these reasons. That I've got to be able to work with teachers to be able to get us on the long road, right? We're on the long road to having all of these kids understand their rights and responsibilities. And my job as a parent is to get my children, who are pretty good at advocating for themselves, to understand the responsibilities they have to other people, right? But it ain't going to happen overnight. So this is a long-term process. All right. I think that's it. Yeah, I have in here, if you want the slides, I have who I think is doing great work. I think Justin Passion and Samir Kanduja, for anything to do with Yik Yak, by the way, forgot about that, Max, is awesome. Yik Yak is formed spring 24 months ago. Fair? So the only difference about Yik Yak is that it's conducive to the zip code, right? So it's even worse because then young people, so it's an anonymous place to post questions and have you get trashed, but it's connected to zip code, so kids, it's much more virulent and toxic to the school community. So it's not just on Ask FM that you're just randomly people, some kids will know, you can find out who it is, but Yik Yak absolutely localizes the problem. So if you want information about those kinds of things, why Yik Yak and Form Spring and Ask FM and all those things pop up and get called something different or get closed down and then 12 months later another iteration, Samir and Justin are amazing at that, and so is Dana Boyd. Dana Boyd is off the hook amazing on these issues. Her last book is called It's Complicated. It came out in February. She is brilliant about middle schoolers and understanding how they hide themselves in plain sight in social networking. She is absolutely brilliant. So if you have any questions or you're working with high school people, Charlie and I are doing really building, and Charlie can talk to you about this if you have a minute afterwards. We're working on a freshman orientation program here so that seniors have more content in the Boulder Pride program and hopefully in the Fairview night program, where we're teaching the seniors how to be available to the freshmen. And that connects to everything from, for example, if you're a white Colorado boy who's never really knows anything about the Hispanic culture and in your group is a 9th grade Hispanic girl, this ties, of course, to academic engagement and keeping these kids in school, right? That if a freshman girl doesn't feel comfortable or struggling, but she has a Panther Pride person who is something for all different kinds of reasons in our culture, she has a hard time going and talking to for support, that young man has an understanding of those class and race dynamics. And then particularly in this community as well, as a reflection of that, because certainly it's alive and well here. So being able to teach them to be able to do that, that's just one avenue. It's one that I'm particularly focused on that program. But also about domestic violence and abusive relationships, and about how we teach seniors that if they're in the Panther or Pride program and they go to a party and another Pride person is hitting on a freshman girl, is that a problem, right? Is that a problem? Is that an abuse of power? What does that look like? How are you supposed to speak to that? All of these things are important when we put kids in positions of leadership, because we have to give them the content to be able to actually exercise it with authority and ethically. If they don't, then the program really splinters, and young people's experience of leadership is really compromised. So I'm really, and Charlie's really interested in doing that, and actually, one of our Panther Pride people, one of our interns, Ko, who's a senior, is here too. Can you, also in an orange shirt. So if you'd like to talk to any of those people about that, we'd be more then happy to talk to you about the programs that we're doing locally as well.
And
Charlie?
Yeah, I'll also say, if you have any interest in working with us at all, there's a lot of different ways that we're doing things. If it's in like classroom stuff, or if it's having your students write about things that you don't give them assignments for, but they might be interested in, we have platforms for that, and are always looking for kids to take surveys and work with us in a number of ways. So we're local and we're proud of that, and so use us as resources, please.
All right, it's 5:03. So we'll be here for a little bit, but thank you very much.
Thank you.